Now, months into the coronavirus pandemic, how well have Europe's leaders steered their citizens through the crisis? Euronews has been asking people across the continent what they think about their own politicians and about European leadership from Brussels. Neil O'Reilly has the story.
In times of crisis, people look for leadership, and amid Europe's unprecedented COVID emergency, that's exactly what happened at a national and EU level. In the first sudden shock of the pandemic, the effectiveness of governments' responses varied. Several months on, how has it evolved? Euronews, in partnership with pollsters Redfield and Wilton Strategies, canvassed views in several countries. With a recent spike in cases, most Germans deem their government's response adequate. But in Italy, France and Spain, people are not convinced. 60% of Spaniards feel their leaders' actions are falling short. And as the EU initially struggled to help individual states, the crisis raised profound questions about the value of membership of the bloc. Our survey found that there were still healthy majorities for remaining in the EU in Germany and Spain, but in France and Italy support plunged to the mid-40s, with more people either against or undecided. And only in Spain do a majority of people think belonging to the EU has been positive or very positive for the country. Germans aren't so sure, and only around 40% of the French see the benefits, while a third of Italians view the effect of membership as somewhat or very negative. In contrast, there's general enthusiasm among respondents for a coordinated EU response to any future health crises. More than three-quarters of Spaniards agree or strongly agree with the idea of more Europe on public health issues. That's also the majority view in Germany, Italy and France, while in all four countries only very small minorities disagree. As Europe braces for a possible second wave of the pandemic, leaders in Brussels and national capitals have much to reflect on. Across the EU, people will expect lessons to have been learned. Neil O'Reilly, Euronews.
Well, for a little bit more analysis, let's speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's live for us in London. Darren, of course, when there is a crisis, it's essential that there is close scrutiny of our leaders and our politicians. I'd love to know what your takeaway is from the Euronews poll and the findings, because it looks perhaps on the surface like this is bad news for Brussels, or do you think that is just par of the course whenever there's a crisis like this?
Yeah, I think in many regards, Rosie, you're right to say that this is of concern to Brussels, and I think it is one of the reasons that actually we saw EU leaders try and work really hard to get a deal a couple of weeks ago on an EU recovery fund, because they realised that there actually was a rise in Euroscepticism across Europe, and this coronavirus crisis was a threat to the political project, and that's borne out in that Euronews poll, where support for the European Union has taken a hit. It is a crisis that it has struggled with from the very start, whether it was managing not to coordinate border closures through to the healthcare crisis, where certain countries, particularly Italy to begin with, seem to be receiving more help from Russia and China than it did from Brussels. But I think there is a sense that Europe hopes it has got on the front foot again, that this is a crisis that it's managing to deal with, and that ultimately it is a crisis in which the EU Recovery Fund, essentially when people start to see that money flow from Brussels to particular projects, will make a difference. Also interesting, of course, on many people wanting to see the EU get more involved in health matters. Now, ultimately, at the moment, health is pretty much, to a large degree, the predominance of individual member states. You know what, I think we may well see that change, and whatever comes out of this crisis, Rosie, we're likely to see more of Europe, whether you like it or not, more of the European Union interfering or having an effect on people's lives, because this crisis in some ways has brought Europe closer together.
Darren, thank you very much, our political editor there in London.